Hello, hello. Good morning. Welcome to Stake Your Wealth Live Edition.
That's
I'm
right.
Greg. This is Mary Daphne.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. So on these lives, we go into more depth on whatever lesson we released during the week. And this week, we released a classic quandary
Yes.
for anyone aspiring to financial independence, which is the debate between essentially frugality
Right.
versus earning money, right? How are you going to get to your net worth goal faster? Is it by saving money or earning money? And the obvious answer, of course, is that you need a bit of both, right?
Yeah. The balance.
You can't save money you don't have, so you got to earn some money. But the problem and the reason why this is even worth discussing is that oftentimes what happens is people, they focus more so on the earning than the saving,
Right.
right? And you get into a situation where you're earning more and more and more, and that's great. And in theory, as you're earning more, you can save more.
But,
Instead,
yeah.
they earn more and then
Yeah.
spend it all.
Right. Right. The inflation.
Right. And so, yes, we open up saying you need to earn money to save money, but you would be surprised at how the breakdown actually sort of falls along this spectrum of net worth.
Yeah.
And you can have investment bankers who are making $300,000-$400,000 a year, who are saving less money than the person making $50,000 a year.
Yeah.
Simply because the banker is deciding, they need a Maserati and they need to live in, a penthouse apartment.
Prada suits.
Right, Prada suits, whatever. And so they end up potentially even negative in terms of their savings rate, right? They're actually potentially even in debt to fund this lifestyle. And as a result, yeah, they've earned a lot more money, but they haven't saved any of it. And so they end up on a net worth basis being poorer than this frugal person who was just, in a very disciplined way, stashing money in the bank every paycheck, and gradually growing their nest egg.
Right. I mean, I think some people will ask, though, like, what's the point of saving money if, or at least what's the point of working so hard in a traditional job with a good salary if you can't spend the money that you earn? I think there are a lot of people who wonder that, right? Why not get the Prada suits and why not, eat out for lunch, dinner, breakfast, whatever? And why not drive the Maserati? If you're earning it, if you're like, what's the point? If to you, it's not about, maybe that to you is your wealth accumulation by buying these material objects that maybe give you a lot of satisfaction, right? What would you say to that person?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all,
Yeah.
absolutely, right?
It's tricky. It's tough.
It's a good question to ask, and it is tough to manage the balance.
Tough. Yeah.
And you should spend some of the money you earn, right? That's a way of rewarding yourself.
Right.
And in many ways, if you're spending on the right things, it can actually enhance your ability to be more productive and to be more mentally at peace. So there are definitely powerful ways you can use money to reward yourself and to enhance the process of building your wealth. The problem, of course, comes when you start to use your money as a crutch,
right?
For you can call it a crutch. You could also just call it. We talked about this last week. Sort of this objective, right?
Yeah.
This means to an end, or this becomes the end,
and
you're
it
pursuing
consumes you so thoroughly that you stop talking to your friends. You stop, engaging with your partner. You stop, calling your relatives. I don't know. You stop like eating properly. You're so consumed.
It can become this obsession.
Yeah.
And by becoming the most important thing to you, the money ends up doing more harm than good.
Yeah.
And so that's happens more than you might think, and it happens in subtle ways, right? You don't have to be obsessed with money for this to happen to you. You just might start to quietly make decisions that prioritize the money as opposed to other aspects of your life that are important.
Right.
Right. And it's very tricky to sort of identify. But of course, the opposite's also true, right?
Yeah.
You can have these people who are so intensely frugal that they deprive themselves of any reasonable comfort.
Right. When
right?
they don't need to be that draconian about it. Right?
Yeah.
Like
in the winter, they keep their heating
oh
at 52 degrees, so they're freezing the whole time.
They're freezing, and then they're hit with like these medical bills because they have to go.
Right, because their immune system's compromised.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, it can backfire, right? The title of this live episode is Does Frugal Ever Pay?
Right.
And it certainly does in the sense that it's a skill you can develop to help increase your savings at any earning level.
Right.
And that's critical. But at the same time, it can start to cost you when you start making sacrifices that impact your ability to be healthy or productive, right?
Yeah.
Another example would be, let's say you decided you were going to bike everywhere instead of drive. I applaud that, right? I encourage people to go out and bike and use non-polluting forms of transportation that also get you fit. But if you find yourself biking an hour when it could take you 15 minutes to get there, right, by car, then you've wasted 45 minutes. And okay, if that's your exercise, then maybe it's worth it. But there's just a trade-off with some of these things where you start to say, I get that you're saving some money, but what did it cost you in return?
Right. So then let me ask you this, and for those of you joining us, maybe you have some ideas on this as well. If it's about a balance, right, the frugality and earning money in order to achieve your goals for wealth building, whatever that looks like to you, whatever you've defined as your enough, right, which we talked about, and Greg has a great video about that. In terms of frugality, like if somebody wants to start becoming more frugal in certain areas of their life, what would you recommend they start with, and how can they start making something that will be amenable to also being happy with that? And I have some ideas too, but I want to hear yours first.
In terms of striking the balance?
Yeah, so what should they start being frugal with? Like what are some small changes they can make? You talked about the latte, right? If you put in an Excel chart, how many a $4 latte.
Right. Well, that's the classic is trope the right word? That's the classic example that I think you see a lot in the financial independence world, and it's a very good one. It's a very effective one, right? If you spend $4 a day on a latte and you get that, let's say
5 times a week.
5 times a week for 5 times a week, that's $20 a week, right? And let's say you do that 50 weeks a year, right? You start to that adds up very quickly. And once you start to assume that you were, instead of spending that latte, you're going to just deposit it in your savings account, more importantly, your brokerage account. If you were going to invest that money,
put that money to work.
Put the money to work and get the compounding interest, it can literally cost you tens of thousands of dollars over the course of a few decades.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Which is just a staggering statistic.
Exorbitant, yeah.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, well, all I wanted was a coffee. Well, it's like, all right, fine. You can get a coffee, but make it at home, right? Yeah. It's very easy to do, and it's way cheaper. So I think that applies to any kind of eating out, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying don't go to restaurants
but make it like a
but make it
once
a reward,
a month thing, or a reward.
Yeah. Food. If you the easiest way to figure out where to start to
cut down,
cut off the fat, so to speak, to trim the fat, is to just list out your expenses by category, right?
And Mint has a great way of doing that.
Mint is a phenomenal budgeting tool.
You can turn it into a pie chart, and you can actually see where your money goes.
Yeah, personal capital. I haven't used it personally, but that's another good one that I think a lot of people talk about. But in any event, you can plug in all your expenses, and then it'll break it down into categories. But you can also do it manually in an Excel chart. And so anyways, you figure out where your top cost categories, and those are the areas where you're going to have the biggest bang for your buck in terms of reductions.
Yeah.
Maybe you have too big of an apartment, right? Rent is a huge percentage of our monthly expenditures. And the second one by far is food. So if we can find ways to sort of recalibrate our living expenses and recalibrate our eating habits, or at least the way we spend money for food, you can really have an outsized impact on your total budget in terms of saving without sacrificing too much in terms of your creature comforts. I'm not saying you have to get rid of your Netflix, right? I'm not saying that you have to turn your heat down all the way. But you can find ways of adjusting the dials, and to the extent that you target the cost centers that are the largest for you, you'll get the best bang for your buck.
Yeah, I think I was definitely going to say the eating out category would be a place where you can, and also eating out is also like ordering out or just getting your coffee to go. Maybe wake up 10 minutes earlier or allocate 10 minutes to making your coffee at home. Maybe invest in even like a fancy coffee maker so you can make your latte, and that'll still...
With the little heart design or whatever.
Yeah, that's so cool. And you can, make it into a fun thing and save money. And you know exactly what's going into your coffee. Okay, enough on that. But I think the second category would be like entertainment. Now that's kind of on hold for a lot of people, which makes sense. But if you instead invested in like an entertainment system or something where, you're able to view your shows or movies or whatever, I think that's also a good way of trimming the fat, so to speak. What's also interesting is that you mentioned like being in a city, versus being in I think, really thinking about how you use a city and how you use like maybe more a suburban or urban suburb or more of like an suburb feel. When you're interacting with people, a lot of that takes place outside in public venues like restaurants, cafes, that kind of thing, when you're living in a city, because people's apartments aren't big enough to host, typically speaking, right? Whereas in this countryside, there might be fewer options for like outdoor dining. There might be fewer options for, going to a cafe, and space might be a constraint there, right? But space might be more of a, you might have more space in a country setting, like a suburb setting, right? So people tend to gravitate towards other people's homes. Like, that's one way to save money. If you want to be social, you can invite people to your home if you live in like the suburbs. Like being mindful of these things, like where people convene, so that you can think about like how you allocate your expenses.
Yeah, I think that's another great analysis to run, is essentially where are you spending your time, right? How are you using your day? What are your priorities?
Yeah.
And that can be hanging out with friends, but it could also just be, hermitating up in your home office and working, on some project that you're trying to get out. So figuring out what your priorities are, and then aligning your budget to those priorities.
Yeah.
And you might discover that there's some imbalances, right? Where you've actually allocated too much of your budget to things that are lower priority to you. And by dialing down your expenditures on those low priority things and boosting your expenditures on the higher priority things, you can get a huge increase in your happiness while actually reducing the amount you're spending.
Yeah, that's really nice.
That's an example of you can be frugal, but be strategic about it, right? Be thoughtful about what you're cutting on. Don't cut on the things that are gonna reduce your happiness or reduce your productivity. Figure out instead the excess, the stuff that doesn't make you that happy, that doesn't matter too much to you, and use that as a way to optimize your budget in a way that keeps you happy and productive.
Right. Like the other one we talked about was the gym membership, right?
Yep, exactly.
So things like that. I think it's really important to really think about your preferences and where you spend your time and seeing the mismatch and trying to find the alignment. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So those are some strategies for sort of the balancing act between frugality and earning money. Again, they're both important. It's all about being strategic on the frugality side, and then on the earning money side, making sure you're doing that with a purpose, making sure that that's getting saved and contributing to your net worth instead of just getting spent. So hopefully this was helpful. We always love to hear from you guys in terms of your thoughts on the matter. I'm sure you've had these questions surface in your day-to-day, and we'd love to know how you approach challenges like this. So be sure to share those in the comments. And
That's right.
with that,
Happy wealth staking.
Happy wealth staking. We'll catch you
In the next one.
in the next program.
That's right. Bye, everyone.
See ya.